On the line and Julia.
There we go. We
This
are live.
guys. How's everybody doing?
Good. Gregory, you're muted. There he is.
There we go.
Doing well, fellas. How you doing?
Doing all right.
We're hanging in.
You know what? I probably should have sent this other link. I see you got Facebook and YouTube. Those are the only two options.
Those are the two options right now.
Okay. So
Turn them off.
Robert, what are you on?
Turn them off.
Shipyard.
Are you on Facebook or YouTube?
Shipyard. There's a
No,
shipyard.
all the people that are on camera on StreamYard.
Okay, so I need to send that to somebody else. Because I sent the other stuff. Anyway.
Yeah, that original link I gave you, you need to send to people if you want to be on camera.
I sent the one that you sent out today, thinking it was the same. But anyway, that's what happens when you try to upgrade technology. And was that in a text also, Meryl? Was that
the text was no? I didn't want people to have that on the text because we only have we can only put 10 people on screen.
Gotcha. Let me do the email thing. So can you see if anybody else is out there? Because there were a couple people I wanted to have on screen.
Yeah, no. If they click the link that you gave them with the StreamYard link, I'd see them right now. They're not here.
No, I mean the other
people joining on Facebook.
Yeah, can you check the other stuff? Because that's what I sent out, thinking it was the StreamYard.
Gotcha.
That's where I messed up. Gotcha.
No worries.
So I'm trying to.
Who is
please.
Yeah, we don't have anybody watching this yet. Actually, I need to look. I'll look at it on my phone. It'll be easier.
Yeah. Let's see. Let's see.
Yeah, we don't have, there's nobody watching this yet.
Yeah, I think I thought I was doing one thing and it ended up being another. I'm sending it out via email right now because I did have Dr. Elliott. I wanted him to be here because this is definitely his bag. What's happening right now in DC and speaking with some authority from a historical context. I would definitely appreciate his expertise. Let's see. All right. Okay. Well, other than that, I'm happy with who we have, and we'll make what we always do. We'll make it work. But I want to start with Happy New Year to everyone. And if I haven't got to say that to you yet, I hope that you're enjoying the first 7 days. 7 days of this new year, 2021. I hope that everyone is still doing well health-wise. 7 days of this year. There we go. Got Ziddy on the line. Hey there, Dr. Z. So we're trying new technology.
I'm using it.
Hey there, Dr. Send out one link and should send out other. Yeah, Greg and Julie, you might have to do the mute thing because I hear an echo. Yeah, just push mute. As we work through the bugs of our new system. There we go. Okay, so I can only hear me now at once. So yeah, welcome everyone. And I just sent Dr. Elliott an email. Hopefully he navigates and gets in here and we can have a more, there he is. Yeah, so people respond to me. I appreciate that. Dr. Elliott, we're gonna, if you can, just push mute. We're getting familiar with this new, StreamYard. So mute yourself and then as we talk, we'll figure it out because I know we got a lot of echoes and reverbs. So yeah, we got the people online that I wanted to have here. I actually asked Dr. Parker also if he could chime in, but I know he had something to do. But I did not send him the proper link either way. Glad that everybody's here. Happy New Year. Hope everyone's healthy and feeling good about where we have the potential to go in this country at this moment. What's going on, Marsha? So Marsha's participating via YouTube. Good to see your picture. We have to get you back in the live space. So unless you were, as they used to say, living under a rock, you saw all of the wonderful activities that took place yesterday in our great nation. And it's not hard to have a conversation about something like that because it was all in our face. It was on the news. It was interrupting, and it was can't believe it. And broadcasts were just going crazy with there's an assault on the Capitol, and gosh, it was unbelievable, right? It was like something out of a movie or something out of what they call third world countries. I was fascinated, but I was not surprised. This is the natural course and tendency of the things that we had set in motion many years ago. And I'm glad to have Dr. Elliott here to kind of speak on the more broader terms of how our country has always flirted with disaster in terms of being a true democracy. It's always walked a tight line, a tight rope. And yesterday was the culmination for us to see in our lifetimes, but it's not the first time that there's been so much contention, so much animosity, so much nefariousness. So with that being said, I'm going to begin with the question that's directly and specifically for Dr. Elliott to kind of prompt us off. I would like to ask you, is there another time that you can reference historically that is reflective of yesterday?
Hey, Felton, thanks for inviting me. Can you hear me okay? Yeah. Hi, everybody. Nice to see you all. Yeah, it was quite a day yesterday. I had written some emails in the morning, and I kept saying to people, what a great day for democracy, right? I was very excited about the Georgia elections and, felt like something good was about to happen. And then didn't turn out to be the greatest day for democracy. I mean, we've seen worse, like Felton's alluded to. But yeah, that would turn out to be kind of a black day for the United States and around the world. People are, some are taking a lot of delight in it, and others feeling a lot of angst seeing that the U.S., which is supposed to represent what democracy should be, are kind of representing some of the worst, I don't want to say flaws, sort of endemic to democracies, that there's a lot of instability sometimes. But your question was, what was another time that was like this? We were talking about what election was like this before. I don't know that there's a really good analogy, In my lifetime, I don't feel like democracy was under threat the way it has been under Trump all along, right? But particularly right up through the end point here, where clearly the Trump administration plan to steal the election if they couldn't win it, right? That was the plan, and they didn't succeed, but he sure gave it his all. There's been nothing quite like that. It makes me think of the Civil War, in 1860 when Lincoln was elected. A lot of not all of them, but most of the states that allowed slavery decided to leave the Union, right? They didn't try and take over the Union, though. They decided to leave it. So it was a little bit different, but of course it did end up with great, violence and social strife. And I don't think it's a very good analogy for where we're at right now. Hopefully not. I want to see this as like the end of an era rather than the beginning of something worse. You know, I'm hoping this is the last gasp that we can start to put behind us what has been a pretty terrible time. In which case, maybe the election of 1800, you know, where the Federalists and the Republicans fought it out very viciously, though not, you know, with a lot of violence. Though there were a number of duels, but after that, the 1800 election was also a very confused outcome that ended up going to the House of Representatives, and there was a scheme to try and throw the election to you know, someone who didn't actually win by the Electoral College. That failed. There were bad feelings. John Adams didn't come to the inauguration, but he didn't fight the outcome. The interesting thing about the election of 1800 and why I hope it ends up being more like that is it ended with a peaceful transference of power, which people weren't sure it was going to for quite a while there. And it also ended with the slow collapse of the Federalist Party, and they disappeared. So maybe the party that lost this time is going to go into a long decline and then be replaced by something else.
Don't be so sure of it, right? That's
That's my optimistic side.
Yeah, exactly. That's something Dr. Elliott and I have had a lot of fun going back and forth, his optimism versus my pessimism. So I want to open it up, and I'm going to begin with this question, which is definitely attached to the history lesson we just received. Has our system of government failed or succeeded, or does it remain to be seen? So given all of the testing of the boundaries and the guardrails that we just witnessed, primarily, I should say, for the last few years, but yesterday was the culmination of that. Is our government succeeding or failing based on what we're witnessing right now? And I'll start off with you, Bob.
Yeah, I really think that it remains to be seen, quite frankly. I think that we remain so not on the same page in terms of really what we're about and what we're to be about. You know, we've never actually fulfilled the guidance of the documents. You know, we've got a constitution out there that people pay attention to sometimes, don't pay attention to, that doesn't apply to everybody, blah, 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 blah. And that failure to live by our commitments has been since our founding. And you know, the whole business Wednesday, and one of the things that I'm sure everybody on this call took note of the fact that here we have effectively insurrectionists in action exercising blatant criminal activity as gross as breaching a locked down federal capitol. And yet in a lot of ways, those guys were treated much better than people that protest exercising their First Amendment rights over issues that have basis and cause. So, you know, when you look at both what happened on Wednesday, as well as how it was responded to and how it was dealt with versus other kinds of protests, that doesn't say that it's working. You know, and we've been working on it for, you know, a few years now, right? So it's a long-winded answer to your simple question, but that's kind of where I land.
No, that's a great answer. And so you brought up something that I definitely was going to touch on. And I heard there's an instant comparison. Hey, you had Black Lives Matter activists who received abhorrent treatment at the hands of police officers for protesting civilly, for actually having a cause that is worth that level of galvanization.
That's rooted in truth.
That's rooted in truth. That's rooted in injustice.
Correct.
And understanding what injustice is. I have a different variation on why things went the way they did yesterday, and keeping my first question in mind, of course. But since you did bring up a good point there, I want to bring this into the conversation also. So, what we were witnessing, in terms of the lack of reaction or the lack of military response, from my understanding, for one, the heads of the military said we're not going to bring in any military personnel because that is a slippery slope and could lead to there being a declaration of martial law. Understood. And aside from that, which I think was probably a good call, aside from that, though, I think what we actually witnessed, and I'm going to try to say it as I said earlier to myself, but you know how that goes when you think something, it sounds good in your head, and then you say it, it doesn't come out quite as eloquently. I believe that what we saw was not just white privilege or any of the easy hanging fruits of why the reaction of the police force was not the same as it would be had it been a number of Black people. I think we see, we witnessed how entrenched this country is in understanding who it truly serves. And what we witnessed was the protections allowed for a type of citizen. And it, large majority were white, of course. There was some people of color in the crowd. But we saw how far a certain group of people can take things. And yeah, you can say privilege, but I see that the nation and the things that exist within it that are supposed to be law and order and this structure, this democracy, protects certain individuals at all costs. And for those people to get into the buildings that they got into and to take the things they took, to sit at Nancy Pelosi's desk, to walk around with Confederate flags inside, man, there's another word besides privilege that should be used for what we witnessed. I'm going to get off that soapbox.
But at the same time, if that's not privilege, if that's not a sense of privilege, what is?
That's my thing. I'm really trying to unpack the ideas that surround how is that necessarily to be defined as privilege when there's nothing good about it either. It's just it's something perverted about it. And somebody said,
isn't it the same thing as lynching in the Jim Crow South? I mean, was that privilege, or was that was a sense of ability to do stuff that shouldn't be done by anybody, and yet it was done. It was allowed to be done. People got away with it, and I see it as the same kind of thing.
But there's a definite element of lawlessness, but I still, and this is me thinking out loud and spitballing, and I don't want to get caught up on the semantics. I get it. I know why privilege is applied and is applicable, but I feel like it's too simplistic because there's something else that exists. And yeah, the Jim Crow South and the amount of Black men and in some cases Black women who met their deaths, and there was no punishment. So that's the rub. it's privilege there, but it's also a lack of consequence. And is that privilege too? I don't know. We'll get into some of that somewhere down the road. I don't want to take up all of the the conversation. Definitely wanted to hear from you, Marilyn, and then I'm going to get to Greg and Julia. I don't know if I've come too far away from the question, but it was, how has our system of government failed or succeeded, or does it remain to be seen?
Yeah, it's a lot to unpack there. I mean, I had a long conversation today I sit on a board of people from very different backgrounds, very different opinions, but we're all about economic opportunity and stuff. We would just have some time to decompress. And I think so the government works. So, the threat to the democracy failed in this instant, but I think one of the things that I'm struggling with is like, there is, I think about John Punch, right? And the revolutions when the poor indentured servants had the uprising against the rich landowners, and yeah. So the word you're looking for is not privilege. It's like this affirmative, entitled action that's been kind of affirmative action that's been happening since 1619. So because like it's just in sheer numbers, and so like that's and those guards, some of those probably were directed by people in the administration. So like that part works. And what 45 has been able to do is like figure out like, how far can I stretch something, and who can I influence? And so I'm sure it's an inside job. You don't let all those people inside unless somebody's like letting people go crazy. So like that's what it is. So there was just enough people that are in the government that have the same sentiment, but like they're paid to like not be that way. And they're just like, nah, come on, because it's just ridiculous. It's just unreal. Yeah, somebody said right here on that's joining us, E.L. Thomas says entitlement, and so that's where I am. But the government, everything worked the way it was supposed to. We got back to business, got the people out of there. So I feel like whatever threat was made, I'm struggling to where, and I think somebody's already said this. Are we in the middle? Is this the beginning of something, or the end of something, or are we just going to be in the perpetual middle? So,
yeah. That's a good take. I do like entitlement. I mean, I think that word was corrupted at one time by the Republicans in terms of talking about welfare and things of that nature and calling them entitlements. I don't even know how you get to that conclusion, but it worked. Yeah, that's a good word to use in this situation. And yeah, it alludes to privilege, but this sense of entitlement, I can go do this and there's no consequence. Bob, what you're saying when a black man in the South said, this is my land and this is where I'm going to farm, and somebody could come along and smack them, abuse them, do whatever, as long as they were white, that entitlement meant that they were not going to face consequences. And this is what I'm struggling with, and I'm seeing it from a historical perspective, but I'm also seeing it in the present. So something's coming to a head here. Something's meeting. Gregory and Julia, what are your thoughts on where we are right now, and did our system work?
Well, Julia asked me to speak up first. I'm going to take the big picture here a little bit. Just before coming on, we were watching the public television, and they were getting the take from world leaders, presidents and leaders from other countries. And it reminded me of something that I've heard mentioned before about the great American experiment and what it represents to humanity as an experiment in democracy and a new way of being. That we came from the East, we went West, a new country was founded, new ideas were planted, new seeds, and there was a new hope for humanity. Well, as in many great ideas, humanity got a hold of it and drug it down into the dirt. But it was a great idea to begin with, democracy, all men created equal. all expressions of God, goodness, religion, spirituality, self-governance, respect, we're all given an opportunity to at least get started here. Given the way power works, power, money, and sex being the three things that can subvert just about any idea, we're laid claim to this experiment, this great idea. So I was thinking about America from the eyes of the people who are looking at us from across the pond. And they were despondent. They were disappointed. The world is looking to the great experiment. They're looking to the great hope that America can be. And so, in some respects, I think we disappointed the planet, the world. And in others, I think people, the realists, saw that this is another baby step along the way. But I don't think hope is given up yet. And I think that's all.
So I definitely think as long as we're here, we got time to fix it. And as long as we have some semblance of structure, we can address some things before the rails come completely off. Julia, did you want to add anything?
Not so much, except I would feel more hopeful if more of the Republicans that were, what is it called when they were disagreeing with the count?
Debating
Debating the count. Some of them did switch over. Would have felt better if all of them had switched over. There were so many. McConnell finally came out. Pence finally stood up to Trump a little bit. Those were glimmers of hope. But why it took last night for them to stand up to it. But the fact that they did go in and count and they got the boxes, that was courage and that was hopeful. Would agree with the entitlement situation. Knew of some people growing up in Charleston, some rich white kids, and they had this sense of entitlement. They could do whatever they wanted, and and their parents would pay for lawyers and so forth. There was no consequences. And I think that term entitlement, white privilege is, when are we going to start seeing that is ugly and not acceptable?
Yeah, so to bring it a little bit full circle, and Greg, if you could just push the mute button for me. To bring it a little bit to what Merrill alluded to a moment ago when he brought up John Punch, and I think he was alluding to Bacon's Rebellion. There's a value that became attached to whiteness that allowed for this elevation of privilege and this elevation of a sense of entitlement. And I'm going to come to you, Dr. Elliott, in just a moment to actually bookend this question that you kind of prompted. But John Punch and I don't know if this guy's lost the history or not, but I don't recall his name, a white indentured servant, both escape and make way from what would be considered a horrible life, if not slavery akin to it. And once they're found and brought to trial, the judge declares that John Punch is to be enslaved in perpetuity, while the white indentured servant still has to work off his time and may even have gotten an increase in the time he had to work off, but he's not to be enslaved in perpetuity. And that's a defining moment, such is the case later on, and when I can see his face, but can't think of his name right now. When the decision is made by the Supreme Court that no black person has any rights that the nation is due to protect, the Constitution is due to protect. But Dr. Elliott, I wanted to come to you as I try to remember the name of that great historical figure that escapes me at the moment. And I wanted you to respond to this, which is in line with what we've been discussing. Is this an opportunity to shore up our democracy? And if you think so, because I think when you have something that has worked for so long, it could be a dam, it could be a old plumbing in the house. It's been working. You don't see the small cracks. You don't see the tears and the fissures. So at some point, when you do you fix it and get it back working, even though it was a bit dysfunctional, but it worked? Or do you tear the whole thing up and throw it away? And given that we just witnessed, we have witnessed over the course of a number of years, but yesterday was bearing total witness to the fissures and the cracks. Does that present an opportunity to really make a change and fix things, or do we throw the whole thing away? And if you can, name the person I'm thinking of, because I don't know why I can't think of his name right now.
I'm not sure. I wasn't sure who you were trying to get to, but let me just say, it's when the storm comes, right, where you find where all the weak points are, and so we've been living through the storm under Trump especially, but not only, certainly it's been part of our time. I think one of the things that makes that all of these Trump, followers, the Trump mob, are so attracted to in him is what you guys are talking about. He acts with impunity. No rules apply to me. I can do whatever I want, right? Partly that's because of his wealth and upbringing, partly it's because of his whiteness. I think that's an attraction of, for a lot of reasons, people feel like, oh, the rules are set against me, and here's somebody who just, whatever the rules are, he tramples all over them and does what he wants, right? And that should be my prerogative too. And so you start to think about in history, like, well, when it was that true for Americans? And one place that was very much true is in the South, right? White people could act with impunity and abuse their power over Black people, right? Under slavery. After slavery, that was I studied the period just after slavery, and that's one of the things that so enraged people, that this power had been taken from them. What, I have to treat people with respect? They have rights? What? This is my entitlement, right? I can do whatever I want. I don't have to treat them with respect. And there's that element there in what Trump represents, right? And so it doesn't surprise me in some ways the kind of people who are drawn to him and turn out, and then, imagine that they can also share in that kind of abuse of power. So, so your question though was about, sorry.
This is the opportunity to potentially fix something, or do we throw it away? Andrea Scott, I was typing it into the chat as you said it. Send it to me, Bob. Thanks. But Dred Scott was the name. Go ahead.
Right. And then it was in the Dred Scott decision, the Supreme Court said that a Black person has no rights a white person is bound to respect in America. That was the Supreme Court's, ruling. So the question of, can we fix it? Well, there's always an opportunity to fix, right? And that is one of the things we have to do right now. We saw that with power, right? The promise of democracy is that you would have the rule of law, that power would be dispersed with checks and balances so that nobody could tyrannize it. And what we've seen over a long period of time is power getting concentrated in the executive branch, right? And now, controlling all of the branches, running roughshod over old checks, with the Department of Justice and the Attorney General's office. And so we need to rebuild all those checks and balances with serious consequences. Like I've been dreaming of things like automatic impeachment if you attempt to contact the Attorney General about some, case that you're involved in or you have an interest in, or stuff like that. Yes, we have to. I think we can rebuild these checks and balances and get back to thinking about, like, well, what is democracy supposed to do, right? Everyone have equal rights. Everyone have those rights protected. Everyone be protected from a tyrannical government. Those kinds of things.
So, if you have a dog, a pet dog, and every time you go to pet him, feed him, pick him up, he bites you, and I mean he does it every time. At some point, you should not have that pet anymore, right? It should be understood. So absolutely, if a person that's supposed to represent the country repeatedly shows you that they're incapable or don't wish to represent all people. And I know that I would really need to unpack that for my liking, but you understand the sentiment. Yeah, they're that dog that keeps biting, and you should not have to keep getting bit by this dog, especially when there's a large majority of people who've said, we don't need this dog anymore. Keeps biting us. So I have a couple of clips I wanted to show, and I'm going to try to do this on this new system. I may only do one, but I think, what's going on, Susan? Glad, man. This is getting us to other people. That's one of my former coworkers at the Y. Thanks, Susan. Good to see you. You're still around and doing things. So let me play this clip if I can, and if it doesn't play, then we'll figure it out for the next time. But I think this will speak to how far we have not come and how far we have to go. Good to see you too, Susan. Okay, let's get this this screen sharing thing figured out. All right. Let me know if you guys can hear it.
The testimony before the Credentials Committee.
Okay, somebody say they can hear it because I can't see you guys right now. Can you guys hear it? You got to unmute yourself, somebody.
Yes, we
okay.
hear it.
All right, thanks. All right, here we go.
The FDP had a lineup of very different people. They had Rita Schwerner, the widow of Mickey, who had been killed in Neshoba County. They had Martin Luther King. Everybody knew King.
The seating of the delegation from the Mississippi Freedom Democratic Party has political and moral significance far beyond the borders of Mississippi are the halls of this convention.
But the highlight of the testimony was that of Fannie Lou Hamer, the sharecropper who had been evicted from her plantation, had come to symbolize the Mississippi movement.
Mr. Chairman, and to the Credentials Committee, it was the 31st of August in 1962 that 18 of us traveled 26 miles to the county courthouse in Indianola to try to register to become first-class citizens. We was met in Indianola by policemen.
The president, Lyndon Johnson, he's not afraid of Martin Luther King's testimony. He's afraid of Fannie Lou Hamer's testimony. And so he decides that the country should not see her testify live.
Johnson is in the White House, and he convened an impromptu press conference.
We'll return to this scene in Atlantic City, but now we switch to the White House and NBC's Robert Borowski. Now, ladies and gentlemen, the President of the United States. On this day, 9 months ago,
He did it knowing that they would break away, thinking he might announce who his choice of vice president was going to be. Instead, he gets up there and he announces, get this, he announces that it's 9 months to the day since Governor Connolly, who was there, was shot along with President Kennedy. So he announced a 9-month anniversary. Everybody's scratching their heads.
Thank you very much.
And then he leaves. By that time, Fannie Lou Hamer's testimony was over. However, it backfired on Johnson because it became a story that she had been taken off television and in the news that night, and for days afterwards, they replayed her testimony.
I was carried to the county jail and put in the booking room. They left some of the people in the booking room and began to place us in cells.
She had Mississippi in her bones. Martin Luther King or the SNCC field secretaries, they couldn't do what Fannie Lou Hamer did. They couldn't be a sharecropper and express what it meant, right? And that's what Fannie Lou Hamer did.
And it wasn't too long before 3 white men came to my cell. One of these men was State Highway Patrol. He said, "We're going to make you wish you was dead."
Okay. So everybody back. Everybody can hear me? Thumbs up. So I played that clip for a couple of reasons, and I'm glad we have the time to get into it a little bit. I'm missing some of the people I would normally see here that I would like to engage a little further with, but I'm putting Fannie Lou Hamer's testimony right there in the context of American ideals. I say that given that Stacey Abrams did a lot in Georgia to bring voters out so that we could get 2 Democratic senators elected. That was some heavy lifting. But Fannie Lou Hamer, Stokely Carmichael, Bob Moses in Mississippi, they did a lot of work during a less safe time. That's a lot of time in between, right? And we're still having this battle for representation. So whereas you saw Fannie Lou Hamer describing the circumstances of her trying to exercise the franchise to get the right to vote and be protected in doing so, she also was about representation. She was about having a party that represented Mississippi, and she wanted to be a part of that. Stacey Abrams has done so much for the Democratic Party. My question is, where's her reward? And attached to seemingly a lack of reward for her, where is the reward for the Black population that keeps being celebrated for doing the right thing, for elevating America's ideals? But where's the representation and where's the reward? That's less of a question and more of a discussion topic, but I would love to hear some responses, and I'll start with you, Merrill, and then I'm going to come to you, Dr. Elliott.
It's so funny you bring that out because I had that exact discussion with a friend of mine that was like, "Hey, I'm just so happy to see what she did. Stacey Abrams did this," and I was trying to figure out, like, let's say, so what's the angle other than, delivering the opportunity for like maybe some smoother lawmaking and some policy making by having, securing the presidency and the Senate and the House. But it seems like a lot of the cabinet positions have been predetermined about who's going to fill them. And she had aspirations to run for governor. That didn't work out. So what's the angle here? Like, what's the payment? And will this be, hey, thank you for helping us attain power, and appreciate it. And we'll see it. We'll see in 2020, 24. Thank you.
Yeah. So there's a strong potential for some hollowness, for symbolism, for look what she did, and isn't this awesome, and Black girl magic, and all of the things that are just they really turn my stomach at this point because they're not tangible. You can listen to a nice song, you can dance around the house, makes you feel good. But
nice t-shirt.
With nice t-shirt.
Nice t-shirt.
Gonna wear it every day? You're gonna never take that t-shirt off? Feeling good is not always being good. Dr. Elliott, what are your thoughts on this? And I want to also, make it clear, Lyndon Johnson signs the Voting Rights Act. He is responsible for a large part of what is understood to be certain levels of protections for African Americans when it comes to voting rights. He's responsible for that. But he didn't want this woman to tell the truth, not her truth, which is, I can't stand when people say that's my truth, living my truth and her. No, the truth about the circumstances of voting in Mississippi. I don't retrograde anybody, and I mean retrograde is two separate words. I don't go back and say this is guys that kind. But what I will recognize about that, it propagates what we were discussing earlier, Bob. When you brought up privilege, and when you bring up the what was the word we entitlement. It capitulates to what I was describing as that white sensibility. These people are fragile. They're not ready to hear this. Jesus, when are people going to be ready to hear this? Can't protect sensibilities, but you can protect people. So let's think about that sometimes. All right, Dr. Elliott, if you got something, I want to hear something from you on this idea. Stacey Abrams.
That video is fantastic. I love to show that to students because it's such a powerful moment, where she is able to say, this is what it's really like. And the reason I think Johnson didn't want people to hear it, it's the same divide that drives you so crazy right now, Felton. It's that he was trying to keep the Democratic Party united, right? And he's afraid that's going to split the white Democrats away from the Democratic Party. So he was trying to cover over the deep division among Southern Democrats, which of course it hasn't split yet, right? It's Nixon who's going to take white Southerners out of the Democratic Party into the Republican Party. So that was the political game side of what he was afraid of happening there. Voting rights, because the very first thing Pelosi said, or I heard her say after Ossoff was declared a winner, and so then we have two new senators and the chance to pass a law, is that we're going to pass the John Lewis Voting Rights Act, which is going to bring back the rights from that act from 1965, which got gutted by Republicans not that long ago, which is why we've seen so much voter suppression in the last last decade or more, couple of decades. So maybe we can get back to where we were in terms of voting rights and maybe expand them. That's something that Stacey Abrams should be given all the credit in the world for. I think she's going to be very powerful. She'll probably run for governor in Georgia in 22. I think that's what she's been holding off, waiting to do. But I'm actually very thankful they didn't choose her as the vice president. If you remember, that was one of the possibilities, because she was able to stay and do this work, right, and deliver something huge. North Carolina's Democrats got to learn something from what Georgia did. I wish she would come here and help our Democratic Party get our act together and figure out how do we do that, because we keep falling short. But anyway, I think Stacey Abrams will be getting her reward, and probably exactly what she wants in a few years.
So yeah, I hope that there's something of value attached. And Portia made a comment that alluded to, I guess, the capitalistic nature of our country. I'm not, I don't think there's any significant value in being paid off for something that's for the betterment of the society that you live in. So I'm hopeful that she is provided the opportunity to be a representative in whichever area that has been most beneficial to this country. And I honestly, not to disagree just for the sake of disagreeing, I would have loved to seen her as a vice presidential candidate. She, in my opinion, gets the same, and if not more, I actually believe she gets more of the vote that Kamala came in and, kind of finagled. The black community would have supported Stacey Abrams even more so than Kamala Harris. She was a problematic candidate. And anyway, I'm going to get off that because I spent too much time there before we got to this wonderful new year we're in. But yeah, I don't know. It's something to watch, the wrangling and the twists, the pretzel twisting that people do to not deal with the facts of this country's the facts that exist in this country, the facts that have long existed. And I don't know. I feel like we need representatives such as Fannie Lou Hamer who are less about the politics of it and more about the honesty of the disposition that they find themselves in. And that's how you address it, I think. Bob, did you have any things you thought about the video and what we're discussing at the moment?
Yeah, the only thing I feel like I want to add is that I felt like for the last 6 months, at least, last 8, 9, 10, 12 months, that we've finally gotten past a tipping point culturally. And I think that's what so frightens the people that we witnessed on Wednesday. The fact that the election this year was so friggin' close in so many situations, just razor thin margins for so many elections. But the fact was that we did prevail with getting rid of Trump. We, by the skinniest hair, have a split Senate with Kamala Harris as the swing vote. We've got Democrats controlling the House. It's by a sliver, but we can focus on the 70 million others, or we can go, hey, maybe this does say in fact that we are past a tipping point in truth. We thought we were in 2008, right? And then we had 4 years ago coming back with a vengeance. But I think that, and I think to your point, Felton, about Stacey and others, I think it's that tipping point. I think we've taken too many years to get there. But I think if we're past a tipping point, we've got reason to be optimistic that people like Stacey and others can actively be brought into the fold in very, very positive ways and finally take their proper positions and move us to a place of good health and stability and get us out of this, get us out of this, okay, are we tipping over that way? We're tipping over that way. And so that's really all I want to add to that.
Yeah, uncertainty has been our journey for a while. So that tipping one way or the other, absolutely, give us a little balance. I say America's never been perfect, but there are some levels and some ideas of civility that we seemingly had held on to and maintained over the last 40 some years.
Yeah, and I would say that and it may be simply it takes more of us dying off and more younger people coming up to finally get us to a place of health. But in fairness to your experience and your family's experience, it's been an arduous, excessively too long battle that's still a battle. And but I do have that bit of optimism.
So one thing I want to say really quickly before I give Gregory and Julia the last word. I was pleased, and Dr. Elliott, this is pointed at you since I'm so pessimistic, and I'm aware of my pessimism. I was pleased that President Joe Biden called the people that caused the ruckus and the rioting and the lawless behavior in D.C. domestic terrorists. That was pleasing to hear because he did not put himself in that pretzel position of trying to understand why he should defend these people because they're potential voters, or think about things as you just alluded to Lyndon B. Johnson in terms of holding the party together. Because we do know that Joe Biden is very interested in getting that balance back, meaning that, you know, he can talk to his Republican buddies who he's more lined up idealistically wise than probably a lot of progressive Democrats that he claims are on his team. He's more interested in being that guy. But for that moment, to hear him say what he said about those people, I smiled a little bit. So there's some optimism in there somewhere. Gregory, Julia, you guys have the last word. Anything you want to say before we get out of here?
God bless your optimism. We'll take what little there is. I want to say something about the timing. This beautiful, magical thing about timing. The grand clock, the grand cycles, the grand things that happen, and the timing that surprises us. And Fannie Lou Hamer, having her message heard anyway, despite LBJ, pointed to the timing, the magic of her moment. And there is magic that works and moves on this planet. And it's not just human magic. There's nature out there too. We're living on a planet that we suppose to ourselves that we are in charge of. And Lord, let us wake up and know that we are not. We're sharing this planet, and we need to honor all those other kingdoms and act like we know that, act with respect, and realize that there are rituals, there is timing, there are cycles, there is nature and God working. And Fannie Lou Hamer had her thumb and her soul on that cycle, that beautiful spiritual moment. And she seized it. And not only did she seize it, but the world saw it. And that's even more important. We were open, the timing was correct, and we saw it.
And I feel this.
Yeah, well, go ahead, Julie.
Just speaking, Felton, I was like you. Both of us were pulling for Stacey Abrams for vice president, but I'm not sure if she had been the running mate that Biden would have won. So speaking to Gregory's things in divine order, he's the philosopher. I'm the hands in the dirt person. But Stacey Abrams is so pure. She's such a hard worker. She represents what we want to see. And I don't even call her a politician. She's an elevated soul. She'll have her place, definitely.
So yeah, I appreciate that from you two. And Dr. Elliott, you have something you want to say?
I just have to throw in there. And remember, the vice presidency is not a great, powerful position. How much have we heard from Kamala Harris in the last couple of days? Not at all.
There's good reason for that too, because I don't know if you guys know, and I was not going to keep kicking, but she made a comment about her saying freedom when she was a kid and like 9 years old, and then they find a interview that Martin Luther King did in Playboy in the 60s, and he's talking about a child that he saw at a protest, and the child said to the police officer she was there fighting for her freedom. But Kamala can't have that. Stop it. So go do your research if you want to find out more about that part. Wanted to thank Greg and Julia for those good comments. I do believe Father Time and Mother Nature are undefeated. They have been here long before us, and they'll be here long after us. They don't get COVID. We do. So be safe and take care. And thank you, Dr. Elliott, for your participation. And one other thing, Gregory and Julia, I wanted to say, because you did bring up that moment thing, how even though she was, Fannie Lou Hamer was, there was an attempt to silence her, she still was heard. Dr. Elliott, you're familiar with my appreciation for David Walker's appeal. Things that are transcendent and truly matter cannot be subverted or drowned out. They find their ways to the people that matter. So thank you all for being here this evening. And I'm glad we're back in the fold. We got some kinks and bugs to work out, but we'll do what we have to do. Everyone take care. Got any last words, Meryl?
No, I just want to thank everybody and thank the folks that joined us on YouTube and Facebook. Appreciate it. Try to be as interactive as we can, and glad that we're back, and we'll see everybody on the 14th.
Good to see you all tonight. Thank you.
All right. Y'all have a happy new year, and the first week is just behind us. So
that's right.
Onward and upward. Everybody take care. Good to see everyone.
All right.